Welcome back to Face the State. I'm Ariana Bennett. Thank you for joining us. Well, President Obama recently announced that he's making an executive order to change the military surplus 1033 program. Now, the program takes extra military equipment and gives it to local law enforcement agencies, including some of ours here in northern Nevada. Now, the program has come under fire, though, for equipping local police with things like military-grade weapons and armored vehicles, making some residents say they feel unsafe in their communities. Now, Washoe County Sheriff Chuck Allen is here with us to talk about the program and the relationship between law enforcement and citizens here. Sheriff, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Ariana.
Now, we're in your first term as sheriff. How's it been going so far?
It's been very busy, challenging but fun, yet very busy.
Is it a huge difference, being sheriff versus working for the highway patrol?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's great to be in that leadership position. I've got a great team of folks. Actually, I'm learning every day more about the people, the personalities, and how talented and lucky Northern Nevada is to have 750 employees of the Washoe County Sheriff's Office and how committed they are to making a difference.
Yeah, it's a really big department.
It is. It sure is.
What's been the biggest challenge so far?
Well, I mean, right off the cuff, I would say trying to learn people's names internally. But, stepping into office, prepping for the budget, which was just approved, and then finishing up with the legislative session are two of the big things that we want to get through. And then I've got several things that I want to unveil and get started this year as well.
Yeah, I know, whether you're talking about the NHP or you're talking about the Sheriff's Office, I think this applies to all law enforcement in general. How would you characterize the relationship between our law enforcement and our community? I know there's been some tensions in other parts of the country. Are you seeing that at all here?
And I think anybody who reads the paper or watches TV or listens to the radio can pick out different situations across the country that have alarmed us, if you will. But I feel very blessed, very fortunate to have the working relationships not only with the city, local, state, county, and federal partners, but I think all of us here in Northern Nevada are a special community, and that we are involved with our citizens and that we connect with them in a much better way. And I think, in my opinion, that has been one of the downfalls in other situations that we could cite.
Are there concerns that situations like we saw in Ferguson or like we've seen in other cities could happen here?
Well, I think a situation like that could happen anywhere, but I really truly believe as a leader, whether you're a police officer on the street, a deputy sheriff on the street, a state trooper out there on the highways, each and every day we need to build trust and earn the respect of the community in everything we do. And I think fairness and equality should be considered whenever we're dealing with anyone in our lives, from our home life to our professional life. As long as you treat every single person you come in contact with dignity, with respect, with fairness and equality, you would minimize a lot of the situations, in my opinion, that we've seen throughout the country.
Is the department doing anything differently in this kind of new situation that we're seeing nationally to make sure that it doesn't go to a tense place?
Well, I mean, there are a number of things that are taught in the academy, obviously on how to deal with people, how to interact with people, how to stay safe, because we do have a job to do, and often it's the person that we're dealing with, the victim, not so much the victim, but let's say a suspect in a crime, for example, that kind of dictates our reaction on how those situations are handled. For example, you have a deputy that needs to place somebody under arrest, goes to place the handcuffs on, and then the person turns around and takes a swing at the deputy. Well, now the level of force has to be elevated where you can subdue that subject, for example. So, but again, a lot of it can be handled in how you communicate with people.
Right. It's a tough situation. I think most people can acknowledge that law enforcement is in, your lives are in danger as well when you do your jobs. And
right.
So it's a tough line to walk sometimes.
Right. And we have, I have great working relationships with the two police chiefs locally, with our federal partners, and we're continuing to build our relationships with our spiritual leaders in the community, with other elected officials in the community. For example, the law enforcement community, all the leaders meet monthly for breakfast. So we network, we have dialogue about what is going on in our community, what issues they're facing, etc. And I think just having that great working relationship, so if and when we have a big event, we're able to respond in a professional manner and be able to mitigate those circumstances.
Okay. Now, kind of getting to the topic of the day, these changes to the 1033 program, I think kind of as a response to some of the tensions we've seen in other cities. These pictures that you see coming out of the clashes between law enforcement and citizens, you see law enforcement decked out like military, and a lot of that is because they had military supplies through this 1033 program. The sheriff's office does receive supplies through this program. Just tell me about the sheriff's office involvement with that.
Yeah, I mean, probably one of the biggest assets that we have acquired from the DERMO program, the 1033 program, is our aerial assets, our aviation units, the Raven helicopter. In fact, we just recently acquired one, primarily going to be used for parts, but you know, for every time those assets are put out on the website, it's a very, very competitive effort to grab those. But most of the things that we have in our inventory as it relates to that particular program are just day-to-day items, anything from sleeping bags to binoculars to first aid kits to other items that wouldn't really fall into the category of military-related items that the general public. And I have to add one more thing. Our SWAT team, their uniform traditionally was sort of a military blend. It almost looks like an Army camouflage BDU type uniform. Those are all transitioning to more of a solid lighter green color to give it less of a military appearance.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I saw the itemized list, about $800,000 worth of stuff over the last 2 years, but if you look at it, it really is mostly clothing, more mundane items than the grenade launchers and automatic weapons that you see more publicized. Can you see a reason for a local law enforcement body getting those types of things from this program, like armored cars, grenade launchers?
I don't really see the value in it. I mean, I think when you attach the word free to anything and you're an agency or department that has a very fixed budget, it may seem like a very easy asset to acquire. For example, an armored personnel carrier. I mean, if your city doesn't have the budget to go out and buy a SWAT truck, for example, has a city council, has a governing board, that might be an easy fix for you. But again, the public's perception is always going to be your military is our department. So.
Yeah, so you can't necessarily, or can you think of a scenario in which it would be appropriate for a local law enforcement body to have that kind of thing?
You know, I can't. I mean, it's a great program. Some of the things that we get to acquire throughout the year are very, very beneficial and does reduce items that we would normally have to pay for out of our budget. But when you talk about, you know, tanks and armored personnel carriers and grenade launchers, etc., I don't see a place for that in the law enforcement business.
Okay. Now, kind of on the other side of this, one of the issues is you know, having kind of an inherent trust in law enforcement, and one of the solutions that's been tossed around is body cameras for officers.
Absolutely.
Is that something that you'd be in favor of?
Yes, I mean, we're having those discussions now on a regular basis. It's one of the several bills being introduced this year as it relates to law enforcement officers around the state of Nevada. You know, the big concern is not so much the cost to buy the camera itself, but it's to store all that digital data and just managing that program. And then that's just one piece of it. The other piece is, how are you going to protect victim rights when a media source wants footage from a particular officer's encounter with a citizen? So there are many, many moving pieces to that bill or to that project, and I think we need to proceed with that very carefully.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of implications where body cameras are concerned, even just things like victims maybe not wanting to be on camera at a time when they can't control it, or if you are going into someone's home, at what point do you turn the cameras off, and can you turn the cameras off? Because if you can, then does it undermine the whole point?
But it does change behavior, though. I will say that, you know, dash cams on the patrol vehicles will change, you know, an offender's behavior. It definitely changes an officer's behavior. I know that because you know, you know you're being taped. You know you're being videotaped, and so you tend to control what you say. And I think citizens are the same way. Once they are told that they are being filmed or recorded, you know, they change their language, they change their demeanor.
So you think in general this is the direction that most law enforcement agencies are going to go, body cameras?
I think it's going to evolve in that regard. I mean, but I think there just needs to be a fiscal note attached to it. So, you know, each individual county isn't struggling on how are they going to pay for that big endeavor. Right,
because I mean, how many deputies do you have?
422 who wear a uniform. So if we were to put a camera on every single one, including those who serve in the jail and in detention, I should say, it's a very expensive project. Very, very expensive.
And then the data storage, which...
Right, and then you have to have at least several personnel to categorize it, to label it, and to store it, not counting all the technical equipment to do that.
Any idea how long a project like that could take?
I don't. I mean, I think we would model it off another department, such as the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department is currently studying cameras in their agency. So I see it as a wave of the future, but with a cost to it.
Okay. Now, as sheriff, is there any one project now that you're really looking at? This is my thing that I want to get through right now.
Well, I talked about the budget. I talked about the budget cycle and the legislative cycle, I should say. But I'm really going to focus on growing the department, bringing on more reserve deputies, and then jump-starting and getting my green ribbon panel started by August 1st. That's the target date I set for that. And that basically, Ariana, is a panel of individuals from the community comprised of spiritual leaders, community leaders, elected officials, and others from the community who want to serve on this panel and be engaged with the sheriff's office. And it's a networking opportunity for the community to get involved in, basically.
Okay. How's the reserve deputy program going?
Going well. We've finished several waves of the physical fitness testing piece. So we have several dozen applicants in what we call the background investigation piece. So I was looking at a target start date of around July, but we are actually hiring other folks too for the agency. So I don't want to overwhelm the background investigation unit with the reserve deputy applicants. So we may have to delay that academy until late this summer or first thing early in the fall.
An idea how many people will be in the first group?
My target number is 20.
Okay.
My target number is 20.
And you think you'll have that many takers? People who
Right.
want to
I
do
mean,
it?
we're down to, like I said, several dozen who just recently completed the physical fitness testing. These are members of the community, 7 MDs, medical doctors who have applied. So a very diverse group of individuals who are willing to serve. So looking forward to the outcome of who's in the first academy.
Okay, we have about a minute left. Is there any message you wanna give to your constituents?
You know, it's just it's an exciting time for many of us in Northern Nevada. You have a lot of new leadership in Washoe County and the city of Reno. You know, we just want people to stay safe. And if you see something in your neighborhood, no matter where that neighborhood is, it doesn't seem right, definitely report it. I would rather have somebody report something suspicious than to let that go. And just get involved in your community.
Yeah, and we're growing too. I mean,
Right. I would say get involved in your community.
Things are probably going to be changing a little bit in your job as well as our county grows
Right,
and we
absolutely.
get more population coming in. And all right, Sheriff Chuck, thank you so much for coming on the
Thank
show.
you,
I
Ariana.
appreciate your time. That is it for this episode of Face the State. But for more information or to see our past episodes, just head to our website, ktvn.com. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next week.